So what is the change I see? Okay, I believe companies are grappling with a fundamental problem called next generation. How do we deal with the next generation employee? Somebody who's 25, 26, hungry for growth, okay, has a firm mind of his own. That's one. The consumer is changing. Younger, more educated, more worried, possibly richer. That's the type of consumer we have. One of the things we don't talk about, the retailer is changing significantly. Today, I've been in FMCG marketing for more than 2 decades, 25 years. I see a third generation retailer who's dramatically different from his uncle or father or grandfather. Dramatically different. Not ordinarily different. So today we are seeing 3 levels of change. We're seeing a retailer changing, we're seeing a consumer changing, we're seeing the employee changing. All 3 are happening concurrently in India right now. Okay? Technology is becoming absolutely available and accessible to everyone, every company. At a fundamental level, technology helps you reduce cost. At the next level, it should help you reduce headcount. At a third level, it should help add value to your business. That's the route which companies are going through right now in a changing world. But one thing is constant. Like I said, the brand promise. From a consumer side, aspiration is absolutely constant. Okay, if you look at the consumers of Brazil, Russia, India, China, all closed economies of the past, one thing is common to all of them, aspirational brands. Okay, in India, aspiration is huge for brands. So all these books you read about no brands, this will happen, that will happen, absolutely doesn't apply in a market like here. People love brands, okay, and they will always, always want brands to satisfy their needs, wants, and desires. Impact of technology. The biggest impact of technology is in conversations. Okay, earlier, the brand, which is me, spoke to you, the consumer. So, and the brand invariably spoke from the pulpit, saying, I know more than you. Today, consumers talk to each other. Third, consumers talk to each other with the brand in between them. So the brand is actually sandwiched. So the conversation around you right now is not being generated by you. It's being generated by consumers. That's a very different feeling for marketeers because they've always controlled the flow and the amount and the level of communication with their consumers. Today, that doesn't exist anymore. You are reacting to what is happening out there between consumers. So if you react properly, you impinge yourself properly, you intervene properly, you have some value, otherwise no. So brand to consumer, consumer to consumer, consumer to consumer with the brand at the center. That's what's truly happening out there right now. Next, conversations in the company are changing. With the blogs, with the WhatsApp groups, with the Twitter groups, look at the amount of commentary which is out there on leadership and companies today in every company. So which means every leader, every management team is subject to great amount of scrutiny in every meeting. Every decision is scrutinized many times over. So it's not the consumer alone which is going to have an effect on leadership. Their employees and their conversations themselves will have a huge effect on leadership and how you manage it. The other thing which I never thought would happen, but you learn all the time. Long format ads are working in digital. People are willing to spend 17 minutes watching a story on a brand. 17 minutes, 19 minutes, 12 minutes, 11 minutes. You know why? Today the consumer is saying, this is free. One day the consumer will wake up and say, my time is valuable, let somebody pay me for this. It's going to happen. You want me to watch a 10-minute ad? I'll pay me $100 for it, pay me 100 rupees for it, I'll do it. Consumers will monetize their time in a future world, in a digital world. So long conversations and advertising are actually working right now. You go to YouTube, you'll see it yourself. Premium sensory innovation and business models is the next lot which is happening. In every single category, premium segment has moved up dramatically. I think in biscuits it's 28%, in chocolates it's 48%. You name the category and premiumness is coming through. Okay? Huge amount of premiumization is happening in India right now to satisfy the 2 plus 19% that I spoke about in the beginning. So the question, agility. A small company has no resources but lots of agility. A large company has lots of resources and no agility. But that's what is going to change now with technology. We'll be forced to be agile because the average age of a company will be just 12 years. If you don't respond, you invariably will die. And when people speak of agility, they typically tend to focus on is data available, is speed of decision making there. I believe 2 other factors are important. Is the capability there in the company to change? That fundamental capability might not be there in the company to change. And the last thing I would say is you have to change the format of your meetings. In a fast-changing world, you need to do a lot more virtual meetings as opposed to physical meetings. That's going to be a fundamental change in companies if you want to be agile. Ways of working need to change from being a vertical hierarchy system to much more of a horizontal fluid information sharing and decision-making at the point of maximum impact in the value chain. That's what's going to happen to companies, changing from a vertical hierarchy system to a much more horizontal shared information system. So in summary, brands will always matter, whatever the level of change, because brands are trust beacons. Brands are something which promise something to consumers, and consumers get a delivery of that promise, and sometimes an over-delivery of that promise. In order to work in a digital world, you have to be extremely responsive and humble, because what's going to happen around the bend is something you have absolutely no control over. But if you are responsive enough, with the right agility, and you're humble enough to learn, you'll do exceedingly well, not just as a company, even as an individual. And finally, in a digital world, the thing is you have to start thinking about 365-day or 365 ideas marketing. Earlier, we would say one big idea, two small ideas, let's go and do this. Almost every day presents an opportunity for the brand and the consumer to generate some conversation based on an idea. The more ideas the brand has, the more it will connect with its consumers. So finally, a brand is a time-saving device. It will always promise something, and it will always be rewarded with more business when it over-delivers on that promise. That will never change, irrespective of what changes. Okay? I've taken exactly 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
We appreciate you sticking to the timeline. Thanks very much, Shiv. Interesting insight there on entry barriers dropping and brands being humble. I thought brands were all about arrogance up until now. But let's open this discussion. And Sanjiv, I'll begin with you. You spoke about some interesting things. I think what the room needs to know is that you spoke about complexity being the biggest enemy of speed. And yet in your business and in marketing, I think the two need to go hand in hand. This is a fast-changing world. We started with that premise. How difficult is it to market in that world? Shiv spoke about 365 ideas. It's not just going to be about one big idea, the one big campaign. You're targeting multiple audiences at the same time. This is a young, aspirational India. Your KKT model speaks about how where the TV is not there, you're still engaging the consumer. That has increased your reach levels. What are the challenges in this new world to market?
You know, a lot of complexity which comes in from within the organization. And the first thing, the job of an organization is, how do you simplify the organization? Yeah? Just look at an organization like ours. We have 50 brands, over 3,000 SKUs. We directly reach 3 million outlets. Stocks available in nearly 6.5 to 7 million outlets. You can understand the extent of complexity which comes in from the sheer business model. But within that, if you start focusing on, is how do you flatten the structure? How do you have speed of communication? You don't need big layers anymore. You don't need a pyramid structure anymore. You have to have, there is no getting away from the fact that focus is very important. And in the business world, there is a paradox. And the paradox is about continuous change and lasting stability. There are many fundamental things which have to continue. And just like Shiv was talking about a brand promise, yeah? Similarly, I would say the storytelling, it is the medium which changes, but that doesn't change. So those are fundamental things which still remain. Yes, what has changed is the way the consumer and shopper interact with your brands, the number of channels that are available with you. Just think of it, in India, you today have got over 700 television channels. So just the planning itself on which channel to put your advert requires an algorithm. What do you do and how do you do? So there is, but again, technology comes in and rescues you to a great extent of cutting through the clutter. Today, on just a keystroke, we can slice and dice the country from geographic lens, from channels, from brands, from subsegments, and get to know the essence of what is happening where, which was never available earlier. Yeah? So that's how you start making your organization much more simple.
That's a fair point. But, Shiva, if I may take this with you, Sanjiv talks about breaking through the clutter. You're speaking to a world, you're speaking to a market which is now very obsessed with consuming here, now, then. it's consuming so much that I think the biggest challenge is to break through that clutter. Is that something that, you know, that concerns people like yourselves? Because this is the model here to stay. It's here and now. A campaign that may be relevant last week is no longer relevant now. I mean, you know, the topics of discussion, you see the WhatsApp groups, you see the Twitter chats, what's trending today, what's trending right now may not be trending 10 minutes later. I mean, those are the kind of challenges, and you did speak about brands getting sandwiched between consumers. Is that a concern increasingly as well?
Yeah, I think the reason for this is absolute dramatic increase in access to media and content. So what you said is absolutely right. The product life cycles in every industry are dropping dramatically. Okay, attention spans are dropping dramatically. So going back to your question, the key thing is, do you have sufficient content to generate conversation all the time? That's what's becoming key. So if you generate content for 10 minutes, great luck. If you can generate content for a day, better. For a month, even better. So I think the emphasis on content being king, and more important, user-generated content being supreme, is what I think we will see.
If I may, yep, Supriya, you know, today, like, there's huge amount of data, but a lot of that data is meaningless data. The skill lies in distilling it and moving from information to insights, and that's where the skill lies.
I think that's a fair point, but I have a question for both of you here, and I'll begin with you, Shiv, because you spoke about breaking through that clutter, and Sanjiva talks about the data and using the relevant insight into the plethora of data that's available. How has the advent of social media changed things for you? At one level, you're directly communicating with the consumer. You're no longer talking to the consumer, but you're engaged in a conversation. At another level, there is this increasing added pressure of living up to the reputation. The reputation should not be tarnished online. If I may take an example, and without Airtel being present in this room, they're suddenly these big bad boys of Telecom. They may have a point of view which may be relevant on this whole net neutrality debate, but look at how the conversation has made them, you know, at one end of the spectrum. So how has the advent of social media changed lives? Because every tweet that goes out there can actually be harming in some way. I will, yes.
Okay, social media. The big debate for companies and marketers is social media a channel or is it a community? I believe it's both. And let me explain why I believe it's both. It's a channel because brands talk to consumers directly, consumers talk to brands directly, and there's conversation happening around the brand and what it does. It's a community because every time something the brand doesn't do in terms of meeting its promise or fails on consumer complaint or whatever it is, suddenly a community is formed. So if a young lady went and bought something for a kid and the product didn't deliver on it, she's most likely to go and post it on a site called Moms of Gurgaon or Moms of Delhi. That's a very different community from the way you sliced your community and you're targeting before. Okay? Dramatically different. So I believe social media is both a channel as well as a medium. One of the things we do or we try to do is every day we have a social listening post where all the commentary on our brands by consumer, by type is put in a simple summary and sent to everybody in the company, be it quality, be it R&D, be it brand marketing, etc. And we look at the positive trend or the negative trend and what we can do about it. So we're virtually reacting and thinking about our brand on a daily basis with that community.
If not real time. I have a question to ask of you on this. I mean, you know, social media is both a channel of communication and it's also a community that you engage with. Shivya talks about how it has to be reaction real time. Isn't that a lot of pressure? And are you spending perhaps far more time with your chief marketing officers than CEOs previously were?
First is, you know, we are a marketing company. So marketing is the core function in the business. So, you know, it's not that we are spending more time now as what my predecessors were doing. I would believe they would have been spending equal amount of time. Coming back to social media, Supriya, I think we have to remain very cognizant of it. At the end of the day, they are your shoppers, they are your influencers, they are your consumers who are talking about your brand. That doesn't mean you have to respond to every tweet. But the best would be if you can make your people who are on the social media craft your brand story. Yeah? Let me give you a small example, if I may. We have a brand called Vim. I'm sure many of you would be cleaning the utensils at home with Vim. There was a case where one consumer had ordered a mobile telephone, a smartphone, and instead he got a Vim bar inside. He was obviously very peeved, and he went ballistic on the social media, and a lot of people joined the fray. We had a young smart marketer who said, he's talking about my brand. He bought that brand of phone, packaged it with a nice letter, sent it to that consumer. He had got nothing to do with it. The consumer was delighted. And just think of what it did to the brand Vim. We had millions of people talking about the brand, and in a conversation where Vim had no role to play initially. So you have to be cognizant about what is happening in the social media.
It served the purpose, because I remember HUL and Vim trending those days. Shiva, if I might talk to you, we're talking about the new models and channels of communication. Traditionally, we've seen a lot of celebrity endorsement happen for brands, both like yourselves. Is that increasingly going to be an irrelevant model? I'm going to come to Sanjiv on that, because the Lakme India Fashion Week had far fewer Bollywood divas as showstoppers this time. I don't know if that's a changing trend. But if I may begin with you, is that an increasingly irrelevant model? Or will we see a new advent of that as well?
Yeah, celebrities have been for quite some time in India a very important part of the marketing mix. Japan also you have that. Japan is all Hollywood stars, and there are many countries. Pakistan is there, Hafsar is there from Pakistan. But I think the nature will change. Earlier brands used celebrities because they had a fan following, which was completely qualitative. You took a view saying, look, somebody's movie, Shah Rukh will have a great run of movies next year, cinema. Or Katrina will have a great run of movies, purely qualitative decision making. Okay, and the consumers got a peek into the celebrity's life through the brand advertising. That's what truly happened. But today, a consumer can follow his celebrity every minute. Okay, the nature of, so he really doesn't need a brand and a peek into the brand world. So the celebrity fit has to be far better, number one. Second, celebrities themselves are becoming very sharp. So celebrities are saying, I'm a celebrity, I have 8 million followership, how can you, the brand, help me make it 12? And now celebrities are saying, how do I monetize that 8 million vis-a-vis somebody who has 2 million? So I think the economics of celebrity advertising will change, because the consumer has easy and free access to celebrities and what's happening in their life. And equally, celebrities will start looking to brands to say, what can you do with me to enhance my value?
How many abs did a Katrina Kaif do this morning, or how many crunches did the Deepika do, is all on Twitter today. And I think that's the thing that he's really referring to. The difference between a celebrity I was in complete awe of and the celebrity that exists today has completely diminished. Is that a challenge or is that a boon?
See, celebs have always got a role to play. The important bit is that celebs have to be in sync with the essence of the brand, with the brand promise. Yeah? If you're talking about a world of beauty and fashion, I would clearly see Katrina Kaif playing a role, yeah, or Karina playing a role like she does for Lakme, yeah. And people relate to the brand through the eyes or through the role of the celeb. So they have a role to play, and that's not going to go away.
They have a role to play, but before we move any forward, and if I may invite more questions, I have a quick question to ask of you, a little bit controversial here, and Shiva, I'll come to you guys. Just one question, and then we'll open the floor to questions. The average profile of the people you're selling to is 15, 20-something, maybe just early 30s. The average age of your marketer is either late 30s or in their 40s. Is that a challenge? How are you incorporating? How do you know what the guy out there wants?
So, in some categories, okay, everybody will tell you, every CEO will tell you, every team will tell you that being consumer connected is very important, knowing your consumer. Wearing a tie doesn't make you formal. Talking to consumer doesn't make you consumer connected. So you need to have a little more deeper, insights and a deeper consciousness to really judge that. In many categories, the consumer doesn't actually know what he wants, in which case you need to lead him. And that's very, very true in technology categories. Okay, the consumer cannot envisage what a product like that could be. Like, I'm sure nobody would ever have thought of how WhatsApp should work. Okay, so you have to do a bit of both, and there is absolutely no better answer than staying tuned with consumers.
Sanjiv, would you agree? I mean, you have a 40-something researcher. You had a great guy who made Vim an overnight brand, and everybody was talking about it. But you know, the average age of a marketer in your company is going to be 40-something. You selling stuff to 15, 20-something who are very, very impressionable with what their peer group thinks, who are very impressionable with the dialogue on social media or elsewhere. Is that a challenge?
See, first is a company like ours, we don't just cater to the 18 and 25s. Yeah? We have brands which straddle the pyramid from all perspective. So we cater to even the 60 plus people. And important bit is that a marketeer has to relate to his target consumer. That's the key bit. Yeah? And even if he's a 40-year-old, if he can put in the lens where he can know what's the kind of life his target consumer 18 to 25 leads, he'll do a good job. Whereas if you have a young guy, but he's not able to be in tune with who his target consumers are, then despite the age, he'll struggle.
That's a fair point indeed. We'll keep the conversation going, and I'll invite questions now. Please identify yourselves and direct your questions to the two gentlemen here, but please be very, very specific and crisp. I'm going to begin with the gentleman right here. Are there mics? We'll try and cover as many, so keep it really short.
Yeah, my question, myself, Atanu Ghosh from IIT Bombay, and my question to both these marketing stalwarts. When you talk about change, what comes to my mind is the change in the e-commerce and e-tailing. And there's a lot of conversation going on that how much of it is real, how much is hype, and where do you see the sustainability of these models?
I was planning to touch upon that. I'm glad you brought the controversial question to the floor. Sanjiv, you want to have a go at that?
You know, if you look at today, the e-commerce business in India, the FMCG is still a very small part. Yeah? But increasingly, I believe it will play an increasingly big role for the sheer convenience. Yeah? And that's where you merge between like and buy. Yeah, you would be going through the site of a brand, you absolutely like the brand, and immediately you could go and move to the buy button and buy the stuff. So it is going to be relevant for us. And as an FMCG company, we are very clear that whatever channel, wherever the consumers and shoppers are, we will interact with them, we'll provide them the service.
Shiv, much has been written and said about this topic, but the whole online boom, are there enough people really warming up to the web as it's being made out to be?
Yes. The e-commerce market in India is anything between $16 to $20 billion today, and is expected to be about $100 billion in about 4 or 5 years' time. The big categories are mobile phones, the big categories are books, the big categories are apparel, footwear, things like that. That's what's really working well. So e-commerce, modern trade, and grocers, all three are growing concurrently in India right now in value. All three are growing. Modern stores has dropped 200, 300 stores last year, but I think they will come back. Now, in some categories, e-commerce is very, very large. Let's take the shavers category for a brand called Philips. 35% of their sales is e-commerce. So if you're a brand manager of the category of Philips, what would you do? Next, when access to distribution is either expensive or not available, let's take small town India or rural India. Apparel shops. You don't have all the brands with apparel shops, branded stores in small town India, rural India. All the rural youth is accessing those places and ordering them. Business models are getting very, very innovative. But at the heart of e-commerce delivery is the physical delivery. If you don't deliver within a particular time, the consumer is penalizing you. So much so that Big Basket makes a virtue of it and says, if we don't deliver within 5 hours, you can take 10% of the bill off as a penalty. Interesting business models. Selling shoes to women. A great Indian business model. Nobody's done this. A woman, let's take this, Vani from PepsiCo, she buys red shoes. The branded guy is he's sending her green shoes and blue shoes also. Saying, try them on. If you like it, keep it. If you don't like it, send it back. That's a fantastic trial model. It's the best way to get consumption going.
The chances are she's going to keep them both.
Absolutely right. And the cost incurred is given, so you're actually leveraging on the cost. And I think the e-commerce guys are being very innovative. There are too many of them, too much money chasing too little business. None of them is profitable. I think the first real profit dollar will be seen in 2020. So they will be a shakeout.
There will be a shakeout. I'll give some more people a chance, and I'm going to come back to you, I promise that. Yes, this gentleman here has a question. Can you pass on the mic, please?
Wonderful ideas, a huge spectrum. My question is to both of you, but it is rooted in a conversation that Sanjiv, you and I had in Dhaka 8 years back, where you took up the example of Oppenheimer and Walt Disney, I distinctly remember, and showed how these two gentlemen may not have been the best in their field, but were able to, create that space as fantastic leaders. Now, in that context, my specific question to both of you is that what are your leadership mantras for the oven fresh B-School grads today?
Okay.
Man, you moved
Plenty.
from marketing to leadership, huh?
I know, plenty of people
Seamlessly.
listening to that. You want to take it, Sanjiv?
Again, there are many, what I would call as the human truths, the values, yeah? The style of leadership undergoes a shift with the evolving societal expectations, yeah? And that's very important to recognize. But the core leadership, the essence of leadership does not always undergo a shift, yeah? So first important bit is, a young guy coming out of a grad school might be wanting to join an organization, which might be a very staid organization, and all big organizations have a culture, distinct culture of their own. I would say, live yourself.
Fair point. Yes, sir. You have a question there.
Thanks to the speakers. My name is Rajiv Khurana. We are talking about brands, and brands we talk about the promoted brands and the perceived brands. So far the discussion has been with FMCG. Now let's move a little bit on the telecom sector. When there are only 3 or 4 players in a city like Delhi, and all of us sitting here would be suffering in terms of the call drops, the connectivity, and 3G today is Ayaji and Gayaji. The question is, what kind of options do we have in the hands of the customers? Because all of us still need connectivity.
Shiv, you want to take a go at that?
Yeah. That's a fair question, and it'll always be a case and a situation when you have high capital expenditure in infrastructure industries. The government, creates a license fee or sells a license fee based on the spectrum. So there are a bunch of people who can actually, come in and bid for that. So in those kind of markets, I think the government got 100,000 crores a month ago. You'll have 3 people per circle, 4 people per circle. Going to 20 people per circle is not the answer, because the last 17 will die. So that's not the answer. These are scale businesses. And the option is what the government has pushed in the last 2 years, mobile number portability is one option. You will have a second generation of innovation which is coming in things like MVNOs, etc. So regulation will need to change. And finally, anybody who does not provide good service will die. And even within those 3-4 people, somebody will recognize that faster than the others. Okay, so a lot of people will work to satisfy your needs and desires. There will never be an easy answer if you're unhappy with all 3. Okay, there'll never be an easy answer. But I can assure you one thing. In today's India, no industry is complacent. That much I can assure you.
If I may, in many ways, doesn't it remind you of the days of Fiats and ambassadors? Yeah? You had no choice to stick to them.